Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Dave with Nelson Creek Farms, coming to you today from one of the local box stores in their garden department. Today we're going to talk a little bit about what you can and probably shouldn't put your plants in. Yeah, so stay tuned. Well, there's a real big variety of different colors of plastic pots. I'm having a little bit of an issue with a plastic pot, and I'll tell you all about it. And that bee might even like it. There's usually a wide array of pots and different styles and colors and textures and materials that are available at the local box stores. But I have a special need for a different type than a plastic one. What I'm after today is a good old-fashioned, I'm talking to my camera. I will, thank you. What I'm doing today is picking out an old-fashioned clay pot because it's going to be able to do what I want it to do, and that is breathe. So we get some of the moisture from down here in the bottom of the pot out of the pot. While every plant needs water, sometimes that can be too much. What I have is a plastic pot, very much similar to this one, that I have a plant in out at the house, and the plant's having some problems because the water won't get out of this pot now because it won't evaporate through it. Another type of pot that is increasing in popularity with backyard gardeners is made up from rain gutters mounted to garden walls, such as I have sitting here as this old one. The new plastic gutters won't rust through the bottom like the metal ones will, but the plastic ones have an issue of sagging and warping, kind of like this poor old metal one has. So you need more support underneath and closer together to hold up the plastic ones over the metal. Not only will the plastic gutters need more support underneath, they will also need more out on the front side, because if the gutters are weighted down with enough moisture and soil and plants, they will want to tend to roll out and go flat. So you're going to have to put a lot of supports on a plastic gutter to keep it shape and to keep it upright against whatever surface you mount it to. Now there are other options besides mounting these to a wall. One thing you will want to keep in mind though is that in the afternoons, the heat, of course, will affect the plastic, so you may want to have these on an east-facing fence or protected by shade from a tree or some other source. To help maximize your horizontal ground space, you got to go vertically, just like they do with skyscrapers in big cities. So here's a design of a stand that is double-sided that you can mount your gutters to. But keep in mind, once again, you got to have support there to keep them from collapsing. Another use for rain gutter gardens is in the hydroponics type of gardening, as seen in this photo. Unlike plants that are planted in the ground, which are more protected from thermal cycles of spring, summer, winter, and fall, and not necessarily that order, you have thermal issues that you have to deal with. Too much sun and heat may cook your plants in a gutter, roots and all, because there's so much thermal reactivity around the root container that they will be susceptible to being cooked or frozen depending on what growing zone you're in the United States. Yeah, like here in, I believe I'm 6B, those roots may freeze to death, so you'll be looking at plants that you can put in every spring to grow in those gutters, like herbs for your garden table. Yeah. Table garden? Well, you know what I meant. Cooking with herbs. Yeah. Now, as for other types of pots, pallets can be used as a container to grow plants in when stood vertically on edge. Now, some people plant them horizontally, which that works somewhat as well, but it basically eats up horizontal ground space, and you want to try to keep your garden vertical if you can to maximize your growing space and capacity. So what a lot of folks do, well, they'll put a piece of plywood or whatever on the bottom side of a pallet, stuff it full of soil and sphagnum or peat moss to help hold it all together and act as a binder, and then they plant in that, as seen here in this picture. Now, a good deal of care must be used when selecting pallets or other types of lumber for raised beds. Sometimes the additives and the preservatives that they put into the wood, like pressure-treated lumber, for example, or railroad ties with their creosote, can cause all sorts of problems and issues of product leaching out of the wood into the soil and eventually into your food. And after all, we're trying to eat healthy and better with less chemicals in our system, right? So do your own research and select the wood for your raised beds very carefully, whether it be a pallet, railroad ties, or just plain 2x lumber making your own raised beds. Now, speaking of raised beds, there's a way to make your bed full, your raised bed full, without filling it totally full of soil. Yeah. And I've seen this trick done with bales of straw. People have put seed spuds into straw bales, watered them, and the spuds will grow in nothing more than a straw bale, because a straw bale has a lot of dust and dirt in it and a lot of nutrients that break down by the roots of the plant you put in them. So when you're considering doing raised beds, look into purchasing bales of straw, putting the bales in the bottom of the container intact if you can. But if you have any plastic twine holding the bales together, be sure to remove that before you start filling everything in with soil. Now, as the straw deteriorates, all you have to do is go to your local big box store or somewhere else in your own garden and mix up some soil with some compost and dump that in there to fill in those low spots and voids. And eventually, your container will be completely full of soil so you can have deep-rooted plants growing in those containers. Another garden pot that is seeing some success is the lowly 5-gallon bucket. Yeah, any plastic 5-gallon bucket will do. Punch some small holes in the bottom of it. You can use some of that mat material that you can get at your local garden center that keeps dirt and whatever from getting through it, but yet lets water get through. You get some of that put in there, 2-3 inches of crushed gravel in the bottom of it to help the material inside it that you're using for soil to drain. Those have been known to work fairly well. In fact, I have seen people that have put a seed spud, one seed spud, in a 5-gallon bucket and have grown a great big amount of good potatoes out of one bucket. Now, the 5-gallon bucket is also good for other tubers or even vining plants. I've seen carrots growing in them. I've seen gourds growing in them. I've seen watermelons growing in them. Just depends on what you want to try growing in them. Just remember, a vining plant is going to spread out. So, yeah, you might want to keep an eye on that. And a really neat thing about the buckets is the handle. You can pick them up and move them so the plants that are in them can get more sunshine later in the day, earlier in the day, or even be easier to move so you can water them so you don't end up with water all over your patio or somewhere in your yard where you have them set up. Yeah. Well, that's going to wrap up this episode of the potted plant tricks and how-to for prepping and homesteading and all that jazz. So if you like what you're seeing, give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Let me know in the comment section about what you think of the content. And if you really like it, please don't just follow, subscribe to the channel. It means a lot. I'm not monetized. I'm not doing this for any other reason other than throwing out some information that I hope you find helpful. So as always, I'm Farmer Dave wishing you well. Bye-bye for now.